Hello everyone, viewers. Look closely at the image of the Knights Templar. You see a warrior monk, a pious soldier of the cross, the elite fighting force of the crusades. This is the image history has sold us, but it is a lie, or at best, it is a carefully crafted story to hide a much darker, more complex, and infinitely more fascinating truth. What if I told you the downfall of the most powerful organization in the medieval world? Their destruction was not an act of justice, but the single greatest and most brutal heist in human history. For 700 years their story has been sealed in shadow, whispered in secret lodges, and encoded in symbols hidden in plain sight. Today we break those seals. We're going to uncover 10 shocking truths about the Knights Templar that rewrite everything you thought you knew. Our story begins not on a battlefield, but in the chilling pre-dawn darkness of Friday. The 13th of October, 1307, across France. An invisible net is closing. In Paris, the stone fortress of the Temple, a city within a city, sleeps under a sliver of moon. Its residents, the Knights Templar, have no idea that this day will birth a superstition. They are not just warriors, they are the most trusted men in Christendom. They hold the wealth of nations, the secrets of kings, and the faith of the common man they are. In a word, untouchable, or so they believe. The orders were sealed with the royal wax of King Philip IV, known as Philip the Fair. The instructions were absolute, to be opened simultaneously by every royal seneschal and bailiff in the kingdom, and they read, "Arrest all members of the Knights Templar, seize their property, use torture if necessary." Imagine the scene. A blacksmith, a veteran of the Holy Land, his hands calloused from both the sword and the hammer, is roused from his sleep not by the call to prayer, but by the splintering of his door. Men wearing the king's livery, men he might have shared a drink with yesterday, drag him. He sees his brothers, men who fought beside him, being chained and herded into the courtyard like cattle. The confusion must have been absolute. A mistake. An attack by a rival lord. The idea that the King of France himself, a king deeply in their debt, would orchestrate this betrayal was simply unthinkable. It was a violation of every sacred oath, a spit in the face of the Pope himself, from the grand preceptories in the countryside to the financial heart of the order in Paris. The gears of the state ground down upon the Knights Templar with terrifying efficiency. This wasn't just an arrest, it was an eradication. A surgical strike designed to decapitate the order in a single night. And the central question, the one that screams through the centuries, is why the official charges would be heresy, idolatry. It was a secret, hidden not in a grimoire, but in a ledger. To understand the fury of King Philip, you have to understand that the Knights Templar were not just soldiers, they were bankers. In fact, they invented banking as we know it. Let's rewind. The year is 1119. A small band of 9 French knights, led by Hugues de Payens, pledge themselves to protect pilgrims. They are poor. So poor their original seal depicts 2 knights riding a single horse. King Baldwin II of Jerusalem grants them a headquarters in a wing of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which stood on the ruins of the Temple of Solomon. For years they were a minor, impoverished order. Then, in 1129, they received the official blessing of the Church, championed by the charismatic Abbot Bernard of, and everything changed. Donations poured in, land, castles, farms, entire villages. But their true genius wasn't in warfare, it was in finance. Picture a nobleman in England who wants to go on crusade carrying a chest full of gold across a continent is a death sentence. Robbers, pirates, and greedy lords lie in wait. The Templars offered a solution that was pure genius. In return, he would receive a piece of parchment, a letter of credit, marked with a complex cipher known only to the Templars. He could then travel to the Holy Land with only this light, unassuming letter upon arrival in Jerusalem. He would present the letter at the Templar preceptory there, and they would give him the exact amount of his deposit, minus a small fee. It was the world's first international banking system. They created a network. If a king needed to finance a war, he went to the Templars. If a noble needed to secure his fortune, he entrusted it to the Templars. Their vaults in Paris and London were more secure than any royal castle. They didn't just transfer money, they managed estates, collected taxes, and offered loans with interest, cleverly disguised as rent to circumvent the church's laws against usury. They became a multinational corporation, the first of its kind, with assets that dwarfed entire kingdoms, and King Philip the Fair of France, a man obsessed with absolute power and crippled by the expense of his endless wars, owed them a fortune, an astronomical, unpayable debt. He looked at the Templars and didn't see holy warriors. He saw a state within his state, an organization whose loyalty was to the Pope, not to him, and whose wealth could make him the most powerful monarch in Europe. The charges of heresy were just a pretext. The arrest on Friday the 13th was the first step in a hostile corporate takeover, executed with swords instead of signatures. He needed to destroy their reputation to justify seizing their assets, and to do that, Now we must enter the heart of the mystery, the locked room where the Templars' true secrets were kept. The trial against them hinged on confessions extracted under the most brutal torture imaginable. Men were stretched on the rack until their limbs popped from their sockets. Their feet were roasted over fires until the bones fell from their flesh. Under such agony, a man will confess to anything. They said that during their secret initiation ceremony, new recruits were forced to deny Jesus Christ, to spit, piss, or trample on the crucifix. They were made to engage in obscene kisses on the navel, the base of the spine, the mouth, and most chillingly of all, they were taught to worship an idol, a strange, bearded head which they called Baphomet. For centuries, these confessions have been the blackest stain on the Templar name. But what if they weren't what they seemed? Let's look closer through the eyes of a knight, not an inquisitor. Imagine a young recruit, idealistic and brave, brought into a dark, candlelit chamber. He is surrounded by the veterans of the order, their faces scarred, their eyes hard as steel. They ask him to spit on the cross, or is it a psychological trial? A way to simulate the capture and torment he would face if caught by the Saracens in the Holy Land. They would try to force him to renounce his faith. The ceremony could have been a brutal form of inoculation, teaching him that an act done under duress, a physical act of spitting, means nothing compared to the true faith held within the heart. It was a lesson in the separation of body and soul. The obscene kisses, too, could have been a ritual of absolute obedience and humility. A new knight had to swear to obey the Grand Master in all things, to put the order before his own pride and his own body. The kiss on the base of the spine, the osculum infame, or kiss of shame, was a symbolic gesture of surrendering one's own will completely to the hierarchy of the order. These were men who lived and died together. Their rituals would have been intense, strange, and designed to forge an unbreakable bond. But to an outsider, to a suspicious inquisitor looking for heresy, these secret acts of psychological conditioning and brotherly submission could be twisted into something monstrous. The true secret of the initiation was not blasphemy, but the creation of a new kind of man, one whose loyalty was not to a king and it was this unbreakable loyalty that made them so powerful and so dangerous to a king like Philip. But what of Baphomet, the demonic goat-headed idol at the center of the accusations? This is the deepest, most perplexing part of the Templar mystery. During the trials, descriptions of the idol varied wildly. Some knights, under torture, described a bearded male head. Others spoke of a head some said it was made of wood, others of polished metal. A few even claimed it was the head of John the Baptist. The inquisitors, eager for a monstrous devil, latched onto the name Baphomet and linked it to the goat of the witches' Sabbath. But the truth is likely far more complex and hidden in language itself. One compelling theory suggests that Baphomet was a deliberate corruption, a code. The name, when written in the Atbash cipher, a simple Hebrew substitution cipher, transforms into the Greek word Sophia, which means wisdom. Were the Templars secret worshippers not of a demon, but of a divine feminine principle of wisdom, this would link them to Gnostic traditions, which the mainstream church considered a dangerous heresy. The Templars spent almost 2 centuries in the Middle East, in constant contact with Jewish and Islamic mystics, scholars, and secret societies. It is almost certain they absorbed knowledge and ideas that would have been shocking to conservative European minds. Another theory, perhaps even more explosive, is that Baphomet was a French corruption of Mahomet or Mohammed. The accusation was that the Templars had gone native, that they had secretly converted to a form of Islamic mysticism, perhaps Sufism. This would have been the ultimate betrayal in the eyes of the Church. But there's a third possibility, one that is less mystical but perhaps more practical. There was no head, there was no idol. Baphomet was a complete fabrication by Philip's inquisitors, a convenient boogeyman. They needed a tangible object of worship to make the charges of idolatry stick, by feeding the name Baphomet to the knights under torture. They could create a consistent thread in the forced confessions. The varying descriptions simply show the confusion of men creating a story out of thin air to stop the pain. So which is it? A Gnostic symbol of wisdom, a secret allegiance, or a phantom? A lie crafted to justify murder and theft? The answer lies buried with the last knights. The head, whether real or symbolic, represented the Templars' most dangerous secret. They knew something. They had learned something in the East under the Temple of Solomon that fundamentally challenged the authority of both kings and popes, and for that knowledge they had to be silenced. The original headquarters of the order was built directly on top of the ruins of this legendary structure. For 9 years, the first 9 knights did very little patrolling or protecting of pilgrims. So what were they doing? The prevailing theory is that they were conducting a massive archaeological dig, a treasure hunt on the most sacred ground in the world. They weren't looking for gold or silver, they were looking for knowledge, they were looking for... What if they found documents that offered a different version of the life of Christ? Perhaps evidence that he had a bloodline, a family that survived, the legend of the Holy Grail, which became popular in Europe at the exact same time the Templars rose to prominence, might not have been about a cup at all. The original French sang Greal could be read as sang real, or royal blood. If the Templars possessed proof of Christ's bloodline, it would give them unimaginable power over the monarchies of Europe, who claimed to rule by divine right, and over the Pope in Rome, who claimed to be Christ's sole vicar on earth. Or maybe they found something else, the Ark of the Covenant, the ultimate weapon, the direct line of communication with God, said to be buried deep beneath the temple. The possessor of the Ark would be invincible. Is this the true source of the Templars' meteoric rise from poverty to power? Did they leverage this discovery to gain the Pope's favor and amass their fortune? And consider the Shroud of Turin, this famous relic, bearing the image of a crucified man, first appeared in recorded history in the possession of the family of a known Knights Templar in the mid-1/4 century. Should the Templars have been the secret guardians of the shroud for centuries, smuggling it out of the Holy Land and protecting it from their enemies? These aren't just relics, they are sources of immense power, both spiritual and political. If the Templars possessed even one of them, it explains everything. It explains their wealth, their secrecy, and the absolute panic of a king who discovered he was not the most powerful. He wasn't just seizing their gold, he was trying to seize the very source of their power, the sacred knowledge that threatened to overturn his world. Now, let's return to that fateful week in October 1307. King Philip's plan was meticulously executed. But it had one colossal failure. He got the men, but he didn't get the money, or the relics, or the secret documents. When his agents broke into the vaults of the Paris Temple, the financial heart of the order, they found them almost empty. The vast majority of the legendary Templar treasure was gone. It had vanished into thin air. For centuries, the question has been, where did it go? The most popular and enduring legend speaks of a fleet of ships. In the days leading up to the arrests, witnesses reported seeing Templar carts, heavily laden, rumbling through the night from the Paris Temple to their main naval base at La Rochelle on the Atlantic coast. On the very night before the dawn raids, a fleet of 18 Templar ships slipped their moorings and sailed out into the darkness, never to be seen again. What were they carrying? The gold, but also, perhaps, their most sacred treasures, the Grail, the Ark, the Shroud, and their secret archives containing knowledge that could bring down thrones. The destination of this ghost fleet is one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. One theory is that they sailed north to Scotland. At the time, Scotland was at war with England and had been excommunicated. It was a rogue state, the perfect safe haven for a group of fugitive warrior monks with a vast fortune. The Scottish king, Robert the Bruce, would have welcomed them with open arms. It is said that a contingent of Templar knights fought for Bruce at the pivotal Battle of Bannockburn in 1314, turning the tide against the English. Is it a coincidence that the flag of Scotland, Andrew, is so similar to the Templar cross? Is it a coincidence that the mysterious symbol Leyden Roslin Chapel was built in Scotland shortly after, funded by the Sinclair family, who had known links to the Templars? The chapel's carvings depict corn and aloe, plants that were unknown in Europe at the time but grew in the New World. This leads to an even more audacious theory. What if they sailed west, guided by old maps the Templars had discovered in the east? Maps showing a land across the ocean. Did the Knights Templar, with their treasure and their secrets, land in America almost 150 years before Christopher Columbus? This is the legend that fuels the enduring mystery of Oak Island in Nova Scotia, with its fabled money pit. A complex, booby-trapped shaft that treasure hunters have been trying to solve for over 200 years. The story of the vanishing fleet is the ultimate cliffhanger. It represents the Order's greatest success. They saved their legacy. They transformed from a public institution into a truly secret society. Their wealth and knowledge scattered to the winds, waiting to be rediscovered. If you are finding this journey into the Templars' hidden world as fascinating as I am, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe. It tells us you want more deep dives like this into the stories that history forgot to tell. Your support is what allows us to keep. Their story is one of unimaginable horror. The trial of the Knights Templar was a 7-year nightmare. It was a masterclass in propaganda and legal manipulation. King Philip held the knights in his own dungeons under the control of his royal inquisitors, effectively shutting out the authority of the Pope. The methods used were systematic and brutal. The strappado, where the victims' hands are tied behind their back and they are hoisted into the air by their wrists, dislocating their shoulders; the rack, which stretched the body until joints were torn apart; and the infamous trial by fire, where the prisoners' greased feet were slowly roasted over a bed of coals. The goal was not to find the truth. It was to produce confessions that matched the pre-written script of heresy. Imagine the Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, an old man in his 60s, a veteran of countless battles, subjected to this. Imagine his knights, sworn to secrecy and brotherhood, forced to listen to the screams of their comrades in the next cell. The psychological pressure was as intense as the physical pain. They were told their brothers had already confessed. They were promised leniency if they cooperated. It is impossible to blame them. They confessed to spitting on the cross, to worshipping Baphomet, to everything the inquisitors wanted to hear. A key figure in this tragedy was Pope Clement V. He was a Frenchman, a virtual prisoner of King Philip. His papacy moved from Rome to Avignon. Initially, he tried to defend the Templars. They were his elite soldiers answering. He issued papal bulls demanding the trial be moved to his jurisdiction, but Philip held all the cards. He had the confessions. He threatened to put the long-dead Pope Boniface VIII on trial for heresy, a scandal that would have shattered the Church. Clement was trapped. He buckled. In 1312, at the Council of Vienne, under immense pressure from the king, Pope Clement V officially dissolved the Order of the Knights Templar. He didn't declare them guilty of heresy, a crucial distinction, but stated that the Order's reputation had been too tarnished to continue. It was a legalistic cop-out, a political move that sacrificed his own knights to appease a tyrannical king. The Order was erased from history with the stroke of a pen. Their property was ordered to be transferred to their rivals, the Knights Hospitaller, though King Philip and other monarchs made sure to take a massive cut for their troubles. For the knights languishing in prison, it was the ultimate betrayal. Their master, the Holy Father, for whom they would have died, had abandoned them. This leads us to the final fiery act of the drama. The 18th of March, 1314, a pyre has been built on an island in the Seine River in Paris. In the shadow of the Cathedral of Notre Dame, two figures are led out, their bodies broken by 7 years of imprisonment and torture. They are Jacques de Molay, the 23rd and last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, and Geoffrey de Charny, the preceptor of Normandy. They had previously confessed, but now, facing the flames, knowing there is no hope left, they have one last move to make as the guards tie them to the stake. De Molay raises his voice, not to beg, but to command. He speaks to the crowd, to history. He retracts his confession. He declares that he is dying an innocent man, that the order is holy and just, and that the confessions were lies forced from them by the pain of torture. He raises his eyes and looks directly at the balcony where King Philip and Pope Clement are observing the execution, and he unleashes a curse. Pope Clement, King Philip. His voice rings out over the crackling of the wood. Before a year has passed, I summon you to appear before the tribunal of God to receive your just punishment. Cursed, cursed, you shall all be cursed to the 13th generation. This is not the rambling of a broken man. It is a formal, terrifying summons delivered from the edge of eternity. The executioners light the pyre legend, says that de Molay asked to be turned to face Notre Dame, to die with his hands clasped in prayer. The flames rose, consuming the last Grand Master. King Philip likely retired to his palace that night, feeling victorious. He had won. But the curse of Jacques de Molay had been spoken, and fate, or perhaps something more organized, was listening. Just 1 month later, Pope Clement V died, reportedly from a sudden, agonizing illness that consumed his bowels. The curse had claimed its first victim. Then, in November of that same year, less than 8 months after the execution, he suffered a stroke, fell from his horse, and died a few days later, unable to speak. The curse had claimed its second. Within a year, as de Molay had prophesied, the two most powerful men in Europe were dead. Was it the hand of God delivering righteous judgment from beyond the grave, or was it the final act of the Templars, a secret network of loyal knights, still at large, carrying out one last mission of vengeance, a hunting accident for the king? We will never know for sure, but the curse stands as a terrifying epilogue to the Templar story, a warning that even when you burn the man, the idea and the will for revenge can survive. So the order was dissolved, the Grand Master was dead, the Templars were history. But what if they weren't? What if the organization simply went underground, shed its skin? This is where the story of the Templars bleeds into the story of another famous secret society, the Freemasons. The connection is strongest in Scotland, the likely destination of the Templar fleet. After the Templars were disbanded, many surviving knights are believed to have taken refuge with the Scottish guilds of stonemasons. These were organized, secretive groups with their own rituals and hierarchies. Over time, the warrior, monks, and the master builders merged. The practical art of stone masonry became speculative masonry, or Freemasonry, concerned not with building cathedrals, but with building a better, more enlightened man. The evidence is encoded in the symbolism. Look at the degrees of the Scottish rite of Freemasonry. Many of them have names that echo the Templar past, like Knight of the East and West, and culminating in the 32nd degree, Knight of the Royal Secret. The most prominent degree is the Knight Templar degree itself. The symbols used by Freemasons are saturated with Templar imagery. The cross and crown, the skull and crossbones said to have been a Templar naval ensign, and the two-headed eagle. The central legend of Freemasonry revolves around the building of Solomon's Temple and its master architect, Hiram Abiff, who was murdered for protecting the master's word. The secret knowledge of the temple. Doesn't this sound a secret society, born from the builders of Solomon's Temple, dedicated to preserving lost knowledge and protecting its secrets to the death? It is the Templar story retold in allegory. Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland is often called a stone library of Masonic and Templar secrets. Its intricate carvings seem to tell a story of knowledge passed from the Holy Land, through the Templars, to their heir. There is no document that says, the Knights Templar hereby rename themselves the Freemasons. but the circumstantial evidence is overwhelming. The story goes that the Templars didn't die, they just became invisible. They traded their white mantles for the lambskin aprons of the Masons, their swords for gavels and trowels. They continued their work, not on the battlefield, but in secret lodges. The Age of Enlightenment, the American and French revolutions, all were heavily influenced by Masonic ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Perhaps the Templars' ultimate revenge was not the curse, but the creation of a new world order based on the very principles that the tyrants who destroyed them sought to crush. We end with one final mind-bending twist. An irony so We've talked about Templars finding refuge in Scotland and Portugal, but another group of fugitive knights is said to have fled to the mountains of Switzerland at the time. Switzerland was a loose confederation of cantons, famous for its fiercely independent people and its formidable mercenaries. These fugitive Templars, with their immense wealth, military expertise, and financial acumen, would have been. Legend holds that they helped to organize and train the Swiss armies and used their vast fortune to help establish the famous Swiss banking system, known for its security and secrecy. Think about that. The inventors of banking, on the run, create the most famous and secretive banking haven in the world. It makes perfect sense. But the story doesn't end there. In 1506, Pope Julius II hired. This became the institution we know today as the Pontifical Swiss Guard. Yes, the Swiss Guard, the men in the colorful uniforms who have sworn to give their lives to protect the Pope. If the legend is true, this means that the descendants of the Knights Templar, an order betrayed and destroyed by the papacy, eventually returned to the Vatican. Not as enemies, but as its most trusted. The secret heirs of the men Pope Clement threw to the wolves became the last line of defense for his successors. It is a testament to the Templar code of honor, or perhaps the ultimate long-term infiltration. A silent, centuries-long watch over the very institution that orchestrated their downfall. It means that every day the Pope walks past guards whose traditions and secrets may trace the secrets of the Templars are not all buried under a Scottish chapel or in a flooded pit in Nova Scotia. Some of them might just be standing guard in plain sight at the very heart of their old enemy's power. Their story teaches us that nothing ever truly ends. Power shifts, names change, uniforms are redesigned, but the secrets, the wealth, and the legacy, they endure hidden right in front of us. The Templar are right. That is all for today's video. We've journeyed from a dark morning in Paris to the secrets hidden beneath Solomon's temple and the curses that toppled a king. The story of the Knights Templar is a labyrinth with no clear exit, a puzzle where every piece is a mystery in itself. Were they saints, or were they heretics, guardians of sacred truth, or victims of a greedy king's ambition? Perhaps their legacy is a powerful reminder that history is written by the victors, and the truth often lies buried with the dead, waiting for those brave enough to dig. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and give it a like to support us. It truly helps the channel grow and allows us to bring more of these hidden histories to light. Let us know in the comments which Templar secret shocked you the most. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.